Welcome back. You tuned into Educational Insight segment of Inspired Afternoons with me, Miriam Mia. And now we're turning our focus to the 16 Days of Activism 2020. The 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children campaign is a United Nations campaign which takes place annually from the 25th of November, that's the International Day of No Violence Against Women, to the 10th December, which is the International Human Rights Day. Other key commemorative days during this period include World AIDS Day on the 1st December and International Day for Persons with Disability on the 3rd of December every year. Given the scourge of gender-based violence in the country, which is declared a national address, the government is implementing the Emergency Response Action Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, which was announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa in September 2019. The 16 Days of Activism campaign forms the center point of the government's comprehensive 365 days of activism for no violence against women and children. During the 16-day period, government, together with civil society and the private sector, will host a series of community and sector dialogues and activities to foster a collaborated effort in dealing with gender-based violence. So, as a layman, or ordinary person, as Miriam Mia, the presenter of Educational Insights, how can I get involved? I can be an activist against gender-based violence in my home, in my community, and I can use this platform or my position to do something about it or be an instrument for change, for support services, for auxiliary services as well. So my focus today, this afternoon, is: are there enough support structures for a female who is in high school or FET, so in a college, you're studying tertiary education, whether it's your undergraduate degree or your postgraduate degree, if they are victim of gender-based violence at educational institutions, are there various support structures and counseling structures available? And if they are, how does a student access them? Is this information readily available to all students out there? So joining me for this discussion, I have the spokesperson from Gauteng Education, and that is Mr. Steve Mabona. I have Mr. Given Sigauqwe from Gauteng Justice Institute, and N. Issac from the university. She's a counsellor at the University of Cape Town, UCT. So let me just welcome everybody first. So Mr. Mabona, can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
And I need to welcome Ian. Good afternoon, Ian. Can you hear me?
I can now. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. And Mr. Given, can you please, sir, am I pronouncing your surname correctly? Sigauqwe.
Yeah, you're far from it, Miriam.
Please help me.
Everyone always is.
Please help me. I don't like to butcher names. I like to make an effort to learn this. So before I go further, please help me with your surname, sir.
It's Sigauqwe.
Sigauqwe. Oh, that was easy. I was told incorrectly. Mr. Sigauqwe, my apologies. Okay, so I'm going to start with Mr. Mabona because I want to know, in a schooling system, sir, in terms of policy at schools, what support systems are in place for learners who become victims of gender bullying or gender-based violence? Are they separate from the normal bullying structures that are already at play here? We've discussed them extensively, that the GDA has very, very good policies and procedures when it comes to bullying, but gender bullying or gender-based violence, how does that happen? And also we have to understand the sensitivity of the situation. It's not your normal bullying. Some females might be afraid to even tell parents what had happened to them. So how do they go about, and what structures do we have in place for our female learners? And are they aware or empowered to say, if are you faced with such a challenge, this is the route you take or a process that you need to follow. Mr. Mabona, let me just see. Shazia, do we have Mr. We seem to have lost Mr. Mabona. So what I'm going to do is, given, can you come in there and tell us, are you knowledgeable in terms of while we're trying to raise Mr. Mabona again, are you in terms of GDE? Are there any within the education system, any support structures available?
Thank you, Mariam. I mean, I think the first for me and most important thing for us to do is try to define, gender bullying. It's not very different from what we understand as gender-based violence, but I mean, gender bullying includes any kind of threats or harassing behaviors that are based on gender role expectations. And this kind of violence normally manifests itself in the school environment, when gender roles are not clearly defined. Rather, when gender roles are clearly defined by language or context. So, given that in mind, then you can imagine the different students that attend schools and students that come from different contexts. And that in and of itself then allows for the kind of environment for there to be a lot of discrimination. So I think as it stands, myself and as an organization, we can say that we are happy with, I suppose, the ground that has been covered now, particularly of late, as far as gender education. Because that is very important. We need to remember the various prejudices, unfortunately, that people are raised in. And I know that of late there has been...
Given, sorry to interrupt. What I'm going to do is, we seem to be having a connectivity issue. We can't hear you so clearly, and what you're saying is very important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Shazia to go the normal telephone route, and let me get you on a telephone line while I speak to Anne in terms of at university level. I know she's a counselor as well. What structures and support systems are available to female learners? And did you hear my question, Anne? Anne, can you hear me?
No, I didn't get the last part, Maria.
So I want to know, in terms of UCT specifically at a university, what support services are available for students should they experience gender-based violence or gender bullying? And did you hear my question, Anne? We seem that technology is really challenging us here.
Just for clarity, I think I got all of it.
Okay, you can go ahead, Anne.
Yes, it is. Okay, just let me know if you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Clarity, I'm not. Okay. Just for clarity, I'm not the counselor. I'm actually the project manager and legal officer for the Sexual Offences Tribunal.
My apologies.
So, no, yeah, I just thought it's because the psychosocial counseling support is different from my function. So we've actually innovated a lot in the last few years in terms of support. We have a designated office called the Office of Inclusivity and Change. We refer to it as the OIC. The OIC has set up an online reporting tool. So students and staff who experience any form of gender-based violence or discrimination can actually log into this tool, and they can give us a report on what has happened. And they can do so by disclosing their details. They can also choose to place this on this reporting tool anonymously. This information then is sent through to my office. We then have a look at the evidence, and we make we draft charges and we summon students to a tribunal. So the tribunal is like a mini court, but it's not a criminal court, it's an administrative process. But just to answer your question, the OIC provides the psychosocial support. It deals with education around campus in terms of gender-based violence. But to the survivor themselves, there's a 24-hour response person that's available, a survivor support person. And so there's an email notification that comes through. The survivor is contacted, and from that moment on, the survivor support remains available to a survivor throughout the process. It is entirely up to the survivor in terms of what process they want to follow. They may wish to have an informal process where they engage in a form of mediation. But where the cases are serious, it comes into a formal process. And the survivor support person remains throughout, even in the formal process, ensuring that the survivor has the support in terms of understanding the process, where they can go to if they need psychological help and emotional help. If there's external processes that they need, that they wish to engage with, for example, reporting it at SAPS, then our survivor support person from UCT stays with the survivor, supporting them through that process. Where I come in is ensuring that we take the cases through to the tribunal, and we have interim measures that a survivor can apply for in the interim whilst they're waiting for the hearing to conclude in terms of the disciplinary. So in terms of interim measures, when I speak about that, it means if a student or a staff and student, the case revolves around an incident between two parties linked to the university, then we make an application to a chair or a proctor who is like a presiding officer, and we make an application for a no contact order. And a no contact order basically will say to the alleged perpetrator that you're not allowed to contact the survivor in any manner whatsoever. So that's directly or indirectly, whether it's via social media or any other means. So what we do is we create a protective measure that's in place so that the survivor doesn't have to come into contact with the alleged perpetrator. But this is an interim measure pending, obviously, before the tribunal can hear the merits of the case. If there's a transgression on that no contact order, or there's been multiple reports on the same perpetrator, we could even make an application to have that person suspended.
For me, this is encouraging because it's a very comprehensive support system. As you said, you got emotional support.
Hi, Mariam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? And can you hear me? And I can hear you loud and clear. I'm saying this is very encouraging because this is a very comprehensive support structure that you have in place.
So I'm catching some. Mariam, I'm getting bits of.
We seem to be having a connection problem this afternoon, especially this is something so vital for me to discuss. But Ian, can you hear me? What I'm saying is I'm so pleased that at UCT there is such a comprehensive support system in place in terms of legality of it, like a tribunal that will happen. But at the same time, I like what you said, not victim, but 24-hour survivor support, because that is it. Yes, you might be a victim when it happens, but thereafter, that is what counseling is about, to take this individual and help them through a journey where they can say, I've survived it. I've overcome this challenge yet, however
Absolutely.
traumatic it was, but I'm a survivor, and you are there to support them all the time. And for me, I love what you said in terms of an interim measure in place, because sometimes out of fear or not knowing the process, especially I'm thinking of somebody who's staying at res, they're away from the normal support structure. They might not be knowledgeable in terms of how to open a restraining order. So you've already made that process easier to say that individual or the alleged perpetrator is not to contact the survivor until this tribunal takes place and evidence is heard. So just an interim measure, so this person then at least is not afraid or living in fear of this happening again or repeating itself. So for me, that is a vital intervention as well.
That's correct, Mariam. Thank you. And the survivor support person that UCT has stays in touch with the complainant. That's another term we use for the survivor. With the survivor, ensuring that whatever needs they may have, even if it's academic, and the survivor is struggling to cope with the academic demands of the program, after having experienced a violation, we assist them in making the necessary applications to have, some of their tests and exams postponed, or they can even take a leave of absence. And we support them both with the internal processes as well as the external processes. And, we've come to such a good space at our university in that we are not saying to survivors that are staff and students, if you are in a process that's external to the university, it's not our problem. We are fully involved in supporting them through that process. We don't have any jurisdiction, obviously, outside of the campus community, but we ensure that there's a support person. We also call in the survivor and we advise them on the processes, what types of applications that are available to them. We've also created a network with the senior public prosecutor at the Wynberg Court. We've had meetings with high-ranking members of the South African Police Services. We've actually sat down around a table and we've discussed how we can all engage with each other in order to ensure that the survivors' experience, both at UCT and externally, is one that is less traumatizing as possible. So our goal is to assist a survivor through the processes whilst reducing secondary victimization and trauma to the survivor.
This is so comforting to know that a process like this is there. And tell me this information in terms of what you do, how readily is it available to the student population? So what I'm getting is a first year student comes, is this part of your orientation leaflet program in terms of what, because it's very, very well thought after in a very powerful support structure that you do, that you assist.
It is.
Go ahead.
It is, Mariam. We the OIC is actually engaged with several programs across campus. There's training programs. We are even structuring training for line managers on how they should respond to a GBV or any sort of discrimination reports. So we are creating links. There's a website. There's a website that's designated to all of this information on the OIC website. So students are fully aware. There's the VC's desk. It's a news desk that goes out every now and then with information on what we are doing both at the OIC as well as the the Sexual Offences Tribunal. We've also started something that's actually very focused in terms of a response. The tribunal I'm talking about is a specialized tribunal. So we have people presiding in these tribunals that have very specific qualifications and a background and skill around gender-based violence, so that when they are hearing these cases, they understand for want of a better word, the uniqueness of dealing with a case. It's very different from dealing with a case where a student has committed plagiarism or they've committed an academic infringement. It's a completely different emotional space. We've also drafted a new rules that will govern how the evidence is led from a complainant, a survivor of gender-based violence. We're making it mandatory for all alternative methods of leading evidence. So a survivor no longer has to sit in the same room facing the perpetrator. They have the option of giving their evidence via a video link like this, or an audio link, or sitting in camera, or sitting in another room. So we've created a lot of mechanisms where the alleged perpetrator still has the right to clarify and challenge the evidence, but that this is done in a way that is not traumatizing to the complainant. It's done in a way that allows the alleged perpetrator to ask the necessary questions or via their representative, but it's done in a manner where it's controlled in an environment that's not traumatizing to the survivor. And we've worked hard in making it very clear that we are not a criminal court. And so the standard of proof of proving a case in criminal court, for example, is beyond reasonable doubt, whereas proving a case in an administrative setting is on a balance of probabilities, which is a much lower test, because when a student is found guilty, it's not carrying criminal sanctions as such. The sanctions are really relative to the student's status as a student or a staff member as being a person employed by the university. So keeping all of that in mind, our process is very survivor-centered. This doesn't mean that the process favors the survivor over a person charged with the offense. What it is, when we say it's a survivor-centered process, is that it takes into consideration that a survivor has been violated. It's a very personal violation, where it's your bodily integrity, your dignity has been violated. So the space in which this evidence is led has to be survivor-centered, so that we protect the survivor from being cross-examined in a way that re-traumatizes them and brings that violation, to their memory in a way that further damages them. So we are very confident that the specialized tribunal, the interim measures, the survivor support that comes from the OIC, as well as the education programs that we are running throughout campus. And each year we are going to be looking at, what we've done thus far and whether it works and how we can improve it. So where we are right now, it's not that we've closed the door to improving our systems.
I love this. This is truly groundbreaking.
But students are putting
indeed. Really, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you know what? Every year we have the 16 days and you get people on and we just lip service. And that is why this year I told my producer, I need to know what is in place already. And what I've heard is really, really encouraging. And I'd like to commend everybody at UCT, please, all your colleagues, everybody in the different facets of this very comprehensive support system, whether, like you say, it's psycho-legal, it's everything there, it's comprehensive. So 2 things for me out of this very comprehensive program, it also serves as a deterrent to a would-be perpetrator that, you know what, if I'm going to do this on campus and I'm a student or I'm maybe a staff member at UCT and I'm going to be perpetrate such a crime, or even if I think about it, really, it's going to work, because here they care. They actually care what happens to one of their own, be it a staff member or a learner. Females are well protected here, and also it changes cognitions. For me, I'm looking at preventive. It's going to change cognitions on how somebody is going to think, and also view females in this regard here. So it be a relationship where it might be a colleague on a staff member on a student, or even student who are involved in a relationship which then turns violent, or there's a gender-based violence against the student that's meted out. For me, it's the message that, listen here, if something comes out and this is reported, really, really, it's going to change the status of the student or the staff member. And now, what I need to do, have you, has this unit sort of engaged with a government in terms, because we lost, I think due to poor connection, we lost Mr. Steve Mabona, who is the spokesperson for the Gauteng Department of Education, because I wanted to know if such a unit exists within the department, so not necessarily at schools. Do you know anything about that, and can you lead? And also other universities, do you share your expertise with maybe VITS or UJ? I'm just calling them off here because I'm in Gauteng and they're in close proximity. So do you engage with other universities in terms of what you set up and what's it working, or you work independently? And you can go ahead and answer.
No, so what we've done at UCT up to this point has been really, yes. So what we've done up to this point at UCT, I must say that we owe a lot to our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Loretta Ferris, because this sits under her portfolio, the transformation portfolio. And we've had incredible support from the executive in putting this special project together. So we've managed to come to this, the stage where we are rolling this out at the moment. And the plan was really to start engaging at a national level with other universities and to have these discussions in terms of what we are doing and to look at what each university is doing. And we haven't got there yet, but we have had two or three discussions with external webinars, well, external people that have organizations that have invited people from each university. So I've been on this webinar recently where I've had the opportunity to speak to several people at other universities that are also doing work, similar work. And we've also had discussions with the ministerial task team members who've basically got all of us together from all the universities to hear us on what we've done so far, what our challenges are. But I think that's specifically for the new Department of Higher Education policy framework, which has made a really big difference. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but this policy framework basically guides universities on how they should be setting up their policies and procedures to address gender-based violence. So I think that we are moving in that direction where we are going to start networking with other universities. But it would be great to have the, funding is always a problem. We need funding to set up special projects. And I think this is where it's essential that government comes on board, because what I'm describing to you in terms of the specialized tribunal, for example, this was a special project, and we really needed to get funding to get 2 additional contract staff members, which is a specialized evidence leader and administrator. And so for the next 2 or 3 years, I think that's going to be important. So I think it would be great if we can actually start networking with designated representatives from government, from other universities, and collectively as a nation to see how we can improve this, because for years and centuries, and it seems like the whole issue of gender-based violence, both at universities and the larger society, we've had so many new legislations in place, we have so many policies in place, and we really need to start thinking about what are those gaps, both in education, in school systems, and in the country at large. What is it that we are missing in terms of making or improving gender-based violence, and where do we need to be in how we respond to this? So I think that there's still a need to have multiple discussions with stakeholders and people that have the expertise and knowledge, but are truly committed to this cause. And I'm involved with some groups. We aren't an organization that's not really linked to the universities, but we're also trying to do work at a national level. So yes, it would be great to connect with other universities.
And this is very encouraging to me in terms of, like you say, policies have been put in, frameworks have been there, but implementation is where you start seeing results. And I'm so
Absolutely.
glad that I want to thank you on behalf of Salam Media. Please, I would like to acknowledge all the role players, so executive of UCT, as you've said, your deputy vice chancellor, everybody at your unit, and everybody involved in this, because something like this just doesn't happen overnight. So comprehensive. I mean, it takes a lot of people who are passionate, and it's not even about your expertise. For me, it's passion that drives such projects as well, because each of us got our own work, but then this year is just something that you're passionate about. You want to put this in place. So I can imagine how many hours of extra labor of love you've put into projects like this. I see you laughing, but I do acknowledge this because I sit on various community boards, as you say, they ad hoc as well, but it's the passion that drives you, that you want to be that instrument of change. And even if it means taking a little extra from your own free time to ensure that you leave a better tomorrow for everybody, then for me it's time that I've spent well. For me, it's a good investment. I see my time as a good investment. So and I see your time is a good investment, because for me, not only is this for now a support structure, but for me it's a deterrent for anybody who would be that, if this thing comes out in public and there's the victim or survivor is very protected, it's going to mean a change in my status negatively. So I wish you well in your journey for collaboration, both with government as well as other universities. And maybe next year, this time, we can do a report back to say, various universities, besides that, even schools have took your model, and yes, they've set up, and hopefully some chunk of the funding that is earmarked for gender-based violence is going to reach this project here. We hope, and please, Salam Media is always your platform. So if there's anything else and new news that you'd like to get out there and report, please do give us a shout, and the platform is all yours. But I thank you for your time and for this information that you have given us. We truly encouraged.
Thank you so much, Mariam, for having me and for allowing me to have this opportunity to actually address it, so that we are heard and that there's more people that know what's happening. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to further collaborations with you.
Thank you. That is Anne Issac. She's the ad hoc tribunal, sexual offences and gender-based violence and legal counsellor at UCT, doing phenomenal work, and one of our true heroines in this battle against gender-based violence. Go well, and good afternoon, Anne.
Thank you. You too, Mariam.
And yes, that's it for our program today. I allow you for indulging me for extra 15 minutes, but Anne had really groundbreaking, important information to give all our listeners in terms of our fight against gender-based violence. Yes, we all in together, no matter what gender you are. This fight is our fight, because somebody who is a victim or survivor of gender-based violence is somebody's mother, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter. So please, I need everybody on board. Let us be the instruments of change to fighting the scourge. Until tomorrow, may you be under the mercy and blessings of the Almighty.